folks, here's a really quick video to help you with annotated bibliography. So some students sort of struggle with this, I think simply because the name is particularly highfalutin, because what you're doing is actually not very tricky, and I'll show you what I mean. So what an annotated bibliography consists of is two essential things. First of all is your works cited listing, which is what you would include at the end of any research paper, any paper in which outside sources are used, right? We've discussed this. If you have questions about MLA citations, do go back to the PowerPoint slide on that in the Research 101 slides series, okay? So building on that knowledge, you're going to have the works cited listing. This is for the resources that you think you're probably going to use in your research. The second part that makes it annotated, right? Bibliography is a fancy word for a listing of sources. The reason we don't call it works cited is because you haven't written the paper yet. Annotated bibliographies always come in anticipation of the paper. So that's why the fancy name. So it's a bibliography, list of resources. They will be alphabetical by that first listing, such as in this case, the author's last name, Cohen. But then the annotated part is where you include a paragraph that gives us some background information on the usefulness of this resource, the credentials of the writer, for instance, and how you see it or envision it fitting it into your paper. So that's what I've got here. Information on the quality, relevance, any kind of specific application. You do this as part of an accountability measure as you proceed and do research papers even in other disciplines, possibly go on to graduate school. You'll have to compose these both as a helpful tool to yourself and as a step on the long trail of putting together larger research projects. So say you're writing a research project that takes a year or two. This happens. This is a very helpful guide. So it's just some things you get comfortable with the genre, and when someone says, I want to annotate a bib, you aren't floored. It's not hard, okay? So here's some possible ways that you could analyze the source in your paragraph, right? Some instructors will ask for different length paragraphs. For our cases, just a nice substantive paragraph that gives me several sentences on it. It needs to be evident that you've actually read and dug into the source some. Otherwise, this is kind of a waste of your time. Okay, so here's some possible examples. You can evaluate the authority or background of the author. That would be ethos again, right? Especially if it's a scholarly source or a popular source and you want to provide credentials to say, here's why this is still an important source, a valuable composer or writer, or why we need to spend some time with it. You might comment on the intended audience. Again, a scholarly piece is usually intended for folks who are specialists in a field, professionals. A more popular source might be geared toward a general audience, right? A blog, a newspaper article. You might compare or contrast the work with another that you've cited. For instance, if you have two sources that are talking about a topic with very different perspectives, this is helpful to mention, right? Because you're trying to get a well-rounded perspective on what's going on, what are the scholarly debates concerning this topic. So that might be something to mention as well. And then, of course, how it illuminates your topic. In other words, your bibliography topic is the topic of your research paper. All right. Please don't be put off, but I wanted to be helpful and actually include, this is a source, I had to do one of these myself back in the day, a little meatier possibly in the paragraph than you will be required, but I would err on the lengthier side. And the more information you have on a source before you delve into the paper, the more certain you are how you might use it, okay? So if you've noticed, I've got the works cited listing there. Please pay attention to that hanging indent, right? That's that one tricky thing. It's the reverse of a normal paragraph. So this is flush with your margin. This is indented over. And then we just have a nice chunk paragraph. A block paragraph is fine, meaning I did not indent it here. You'll sometimes see people who do. That's fine. It can look a little confusing with the works cited indentation. And I've actually done it single space for the information here. I'm actually fine with you doing that as long as the entry is double spaced and it flows, because sometimes these get a little long and it looks a little strange to have a paragraph that spans a full page. So I've introduced to the author of this piece and discussed the terms that the professor there is using to delve into this particular argument. This was a larger research project on Renaissance and negritude, particular African-American influence when soldiers were sent overseas in France, and the kind of interesting liberating space they experienced there that helped raise questions about why are we fighting for the American way when we do not experience this level of independence at home. So it's actually a really interesting topic, side note. Okay, so I want you to look through these and think about this. Remember, the main thing is some accountability that you're looking into your sources and reading them before you're just throwing them, kind of shoehorning them into your final paper. We won't have any substantive prose this week, but these paragraphs will feel a bit like that. They're truly a summary. I know a lot of you have been itching to do summaries again because we've been in that analysis mode. A little bit of this, of course, will be summary. And you're also, think of it this way. Let's say you were composing this annotated bibliography, not just for yourself, but sometimes these are collected for scholars and researchers abroad. For instance, you could say, here, if you're interested in reading more on this topic, I have this helpful annotated bibliography I've already put together with some really great credible sources, both popular and scholarly, who talk about the different perspectives on it. And they could go through and read the quick little summary and be like, this is a great source, I need to use this. So that's not just in theory, but that's in reality what these silly annotated bibliographies are for. They are purposeful. I just don't want you to be put off by the name. So remember, bibliography, just a listing of resources you're using in your research. They're not called works cited in MLA yet because you haven't written the paper. You haven't cited them amongst your final piece. And the annotated part simply means you have provided a little extra information from your own scholarly perspective as to why this resource is useful to someone pursuing research in your topic area. All right, look forward to seeing your progress on this. Remember, you also can turn in, get a little ahead if you need to. Sort of stay on your own schedule here, bearing in mind that we're in the last week of regular classes here on campus, and next week major assignments hit during exam week. Take care.